All right, everybody. Hello and welcome. It is Tuesday, June 11th. My name is Albert Chen, founder of Albert's List, and you are here for mock interview and feedback number 99 with a senior software engineer. We're here again, as usual, for the 99th time with Corey Hiramoto, founder of CareerShakers.com, a career consultancy. Share his link in the YouTube here in a moment. And joined by him is Natalie, a senior software, well, a director of software engineering from South Florida. And so if you've been here before, you know how this works. If you haven't, works this way. Natalie has chosen a job description, this one from Microsoft. And Corey will be acting as the interviewer, and he's going to ask her questions, and she will respond. And then after that, Corey will give feedback, and you in the audience are welcome to join on along. So without further ado, Corey, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you, and we're so happy to have Natalie here for number 99. So please, everyone, give Natalie a round of applause. It takes a lot of bravery to put yourself out there in front of everyone for entertainment and learning purposes. And of course, I want to shout out Natalie, looking very professional today. And Natalie's also a part of our 5 weeks to hire interview bootcamp. And so if folks are interested in that, I think Albert and I will be doing another one of these boot camps later on this year. So Natalie is part of our cohort. Shout out to everyone else who is also from the cohort watching today. Now, this job description, I just put it in the Zoom chat. The Microsoft job title is Principal Technical Program Management. But as I've read some of the bullets and the responsibilities, it also kind of sounds like a product management style role. And I think what Natalie's uncovered in her networking and talking to people who work there is that's actually kind of how Microsoft like calls their PMs, is kind of like technical program managers. So because of how that context was kind of structured, I'm not too sure what this role actually is. And so I've curated a mixture of questions that could be like TPM and PM. But I do encourage folks to take a look at it, because I've never seen a TPM role kind of written in this way. So it's pretty unique. So that's why I've got a mixture of different questions. But of course, I always want to give our brave volunteer a platform to introduce themselves so that everyone in the audience can get a little bit of a sense of who they are. And then also, Natalie, feel free to plug yourself, right? What kind of jobs you're looking for, what companies, fully remote, what cities you're interested in. And that way, if people are interested and impressed by you, then they can contact you for other opportunities.
Of course. Hi, everybody. I'm Natalie. I'm from South Florida. I am a director of software engineering at a startup. The type of roles that I'm looking for is preferably fully remote, but I am open to hybrid if it's in the area. I am interested in other software engineering management roles, specifically around management or the technical PM side, because I enjoy both people management and the project side, and those are the type of roles that I'm looking for.
All right. Excellent. And Natalie, you haven't done any interviews for this company yet, right?
Correct. Not for this one.
Okay, cool. All right. So we're going to start the mock interviews. As Albert mentioned, I'm going to pretend to be an interviewer, so I'll ask a question. I usually don't give hints unless you get totally stuck, because we want it to feel as close to a real interview as possible. And then at the end of each question, I'll give some feedback in terms of like areas that were really strong and then potential areas of improvement. That way, for those of you who are also practicing for similar roles, then you can kind of figure out how you would modify and adjust your own answers. So let's get started. Natalie, can you tell me about your product management experience?
Yes, of course. So my 18-year career, I've spent the last 11 years focused on leading technical programs. I've had a variety of roles from project manager to director of software engineering. I also have a background, my technical background is in C Sharp, the JavaScript stack, and Azure. But when it comes to program management, I like to focus on migrations and risk mitigation. I enjoy the coding side of projects, but I always lean more towards the people and project organization. And having this technical background helps me bridge that gap between the technical teams and the solutions that we're trying to bring to life. That's why I'm excited for this role. I get to see the direct impact that we have on the customer experience and just help make things better for everybody. Would you like me to give you more detailed history or go over a specific project?
Yes, can you share like one or two examples of some products you've managed?
Yeah. So I worked at a law firm as a project manager. That is where I got to implement a paperless system. We um, we were able to increase our new client capacity by 23% after I was able to convert our documents to be paperless, working with the teams on training and just doing research and implementation on technical tools. Another project I've worked on a variety of different contract projects, but I also worked at a fintech company on the Leads engine. And that was when customers would apply to get a loan, it would go through that Leads engine. So we were very public facing. The role, in addition to software engineering, was also production support. So I worked a lot with the customers and stakeholders as well.
Okay. All right. Cool. So this is like a modified, more specific version of like tell me about yourself. Like some companies, hiring managers may just ask you as a candidate, right? Like tell me about your, and in this case, I chose product management because I interpreted the majority of the job description to be more product management than technical program management, which is just kind of why I tried a more specific version of tell me about yourself. So here, uh, what tech companies love to hear is, and most of their TPMs and PMs tend to have technical backgrounds. And so Natalie was very good. She talked to me about her her, her areas of expertise. I think you mentioned C
C sharp,
Sharp, Java, and then was a
JavaScript,
one
and
JavaScript, and
Azure.
then was Azure. Okay, yeah. So that's great. So she led off by checking that box, right, saying that hey, I do have an engineering technical background, and then these are the types of companies that I've worked with, and then that should also give like a sense of the type of products that she's also either handled, managed, program managed, PM'd, etc. Now, if this role was a product management role, which it could be based on the JD, then the other things I want to hear is kind of about the different products you've managed, kind of like some of the customer research you've done, the different features you've proposed and implemented, how you've been managing your engineering teams, how you're structuring your sprints, right? Are you using Agile? Are you using something else? And then also when you talk about your other companies and you give examples, right? You should also be talking about what potential things you've done beyond just the implementation, right? Maybe there were some feature enhancements that you did. Maybe there was some additional things you decided to code up or add or build on. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the customer feedback you received and then how you use that to impact the product roadmap moving forward for either of those companies. And also, when you are giving examples, it is good to also share one from your most recent company, right? And I'm not sure if you shared one from
3D Media.
3D Media.
I did not. I did Rubenstein and BHG.
Okay. Yeah.
I I also worry about giving too long of an answer, going into too much detail, because we have an entire interview, so I'll have a little bit more time to sprinkle in more details. So yeah, I just worry if I start talking for too long, then I start rambling, and then they have like this glazed look over their face.
Yeah. Good point. So for everyone, like, tell me about yourself, or like, tell me about your blank experience. You should probably be somewhere, I would say, like 45 seconds to like a minute and a half. Could be 2 minutes or so. So Natalie, your first answer was about like 30 seconds. So you have a lot of more time to play with, like a whole minute if you wanted it, right? And
Okay.
also because I was very specific, I was like, tell me about your product management experience. So a lot of it could actually just be, and because if you wanted to answer it right, like you would just be super honed in and focused on the PM side of stuff. And so if you wanted to, you could go even a little bit more than 2 minutes, because I'm asking for a more specific experience as opposed to just like tell me about yourself. because that one you don't want to ramble too much because you don't necessarily know what the interviewer wants, right? But if I'm asking you for your PM specific experience, then that one, that one could be like 2.5 minutes if you wanted it to be. But in general, you always want to have like one or two super powerful examples that allow you to show your skills, not just tell about it, right? So just making sure you're striking that balance. And so I think you still got about at least a minute to play with to kind of add on to your initial answer. That way you can provide some very short examples, not full star stories, but like something short, punchy. Helps me get the sense that you are a product manager, or a technical program manager, whatever it is that Microsoft specifically is kind of looking for. Does
Yeah,
that make
and then
sense?
the examples I give could probably, since they would be high level, could initiate more of the call going in that direction,
Exactly. Yeah.
like to give the more detailed explanation.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, cool. And of course, for those of you in the audience, I've got my own questions prepared and things, but if you have questions that you want us to practice as well, put it in the chat, or if you just have general questions for me, Albert, or Natalie, also we'll be happy to answer those. Cool, here we go. Natalie, tell me about a time when you anticipated a product or program issue from, let's say, your customer or from just working on your product itself, and how you were able to handle that.
Okay, so a time where I anticipated an issue and how I handled it. I can give an example from 3D Media. We work on a contract-based project, and this involves regular contract renewals, and I also help with the proposal creation process because every time we renew, we always have to submit a new proposal. So I provide the technical expertise so that I can give that understanding of the type of work that's involved to give the estimating of hours and the capacity. A problem that I encountered was when during one of these renewals, the project manager, when he submitted it, disregarded my input about the hours and actually slashed them significantly. And as a result, he was able to lower the cost for our client, which enabled us to secure the contract, which was great. But then it compromised the company's financial stability. And it was also just an unrealistic workload and timeline for the development team. And then on top of it, yes.
I'm going to pause you. So I'll just re-ask the question in case it was confusing, and then I'll give you some direction. So
Okay.
tell me about a time you anticipated a product or program issue from your customer, or before it even came up from one of your customers or internal stakeholders. So if you could focus on like a product management or like a program management issue that you were able to anticipate and prevent, and then share that type of example.
Are you saying for something that was more customer focused? Is that what we're leaning towards?
You could either pick a product that is customer focused or an internal tool.
Would a good example, and then I can give my spiel, be when I worked in production support, and a big issue was just the lack of trust in the system from the stakeholder.
Was it related to the product?
Yes and no. It was mostly the lack of communication made them feel like it was unreliable. We did still implement technical changes to make, like we moved into Azure and Salesforce.
Okay. Yeah. We let's go with that
Try
one.
that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's go with that one.
Okay. So a time where I anticipated an issue with the program or the product from our customer and what I did to resolve it. An example of this could be when I was working at BHG. Um, in production support, I was seeing a rise of tickets coming from our stakeholders and customers. Um, this was for our leads engine that I mentioned earlier. It's client facing. This is money coming into the company, so it's very high impact, very critical if even one lead has an issue. And when I noticed that there was such a large amount of production support tickets coming in from our customers, I started working with the team to investigate from the technical standpoint, where could we be improving? And I found out that we had a pretty good, like a high rate of availability, and the leads are going through, but the disconnect was the perception of from the stakeholders. They just didn't have faith in the system. They felt it was unreliable. They weren't sure if too many leads were maybe not making it through. So what I did is I reached out to my manager and we started to brainstorm solutions of how to optimize the workflow. I proposed a tiered system support where I and the other software engineers could be more of a level 3 support, and we can have, level 1 and 2 get incorporated to kind of assist with the tasks before needing the escalation. So to facilitate this transition, I documented some of the frequently asked questions for the common issues and also helped some troubleshooting steps. I even wrote out some SQL queries so we can empower the level 1 and 2 to query the database themselves to get the data that they need. And in addition, I worked with the stakeholders themselves, because one of the biggest issues was just that lack of communication. And so what I did is I had meetings with them. I listened to their concerns, which was really one of the biggest things. They felt like they weren't being heard. So I listened to the concerns. I had them documented and placed into our backlog so that we can implement a long-term plan. And I also focus on having more open communication between the technical team and the stakeholders, which was insights to our backlogs, how we were prioritizing, things like that. And then from a technical standpoint, we also worked on mitigating the microservice engine into Azure and Salesforce so that it has even higher availability and resilience. And the outcome was very positive. From implementing the tiered system, we were able to resolve most of the tickets at the level 1 and 2. So it freed up the time for the software engineers to focus on their core responsibilities. And it also allowed us to empower to make the stakeholders be more confident in the product itself and in the team. As a result, besides the gain trust in the system, I also was awarded the IT MVP award. This is in a company of over 1,000 employees, over 220 in the IT department. And if you're interested, I do have that posted in my LinkedIn if you wanted to see it.
Awesome. Great differentiator there at the end. Love
I
that.
found that one today. I was like, that's right. I did get
Love
an
that one.
award. Let's talk about that.
Perfect. That's awesome. So somebody in the chat was asking, why did I redirect you at the beginning? So your first example was you basically handling a contracting and billing issue when you were setting up a contract with a new client. And so the reason why I had redirected her, Andrew, was because for a technical program management role or for a product management role, you would not be doing those things. Like you would not be setting up a billing contract for like consulting services as a TPM or PM, which is why I wanted a more eng focused, product focused example from Natalie.
In part of that answer, I was going to mention a couple of like PM specific terminology. Yeah, because I'm trying to to relate my answers back to the job description. So even though I wouldn't be doing contract renewals, how would I handle if somebody overpromises?
Yeah, but that's more on the stakeholder management side, right? Like I'm looking for a technical example with the product you were managing. How did you anticipate a customer need or like a market shift, and then how you modified your product roadmap or program to anticipate or meet those needs from a technical perspective, right? So this is not necessarily a stakeholder management skill set question.
Yeah, I get it more.
Yeah.
It's more about the market research side of it.
Yeah,
I'm seeing trends. How do I?
and the
Yeah.
product. Yeah. And I just took like one of the bullets from the job description, which is if anyone's wondering how I like why I asked this question, there was a bullet in the responsibility section asking about anticipating product program issues from customers or stakeholders. What would be a good answer to a situation that you haven't been through before? You would have to answer hypothetically how you would do it, which would make it a little bit harder. And then in order to have a good answer there, a good hypothetical answer will have you explain the different options or the different scenarios that could come up that would show your breadth of knowledge in that area. And then if you could talk about the pros and cons of each different solution, when one would be better over another, depending on certain context, that would give you a really good hypothetical answer. Yeah. So yeah, the contract management piece, unfortunately, just is not relevant for TPM or PM work, which is why I redirected her. All right. Tell me about a time where you were able to effectively collaborate with a mixture of technical and non-technical teams, and how you were able to translate between technical and non-technical requirements for both parties.
So time collaborating with both technical and non-technical. I could give an example again with BHG because of the production support, but I would like to talk more about 3D Media, the project that we were building out, the MVP for the United States Air Force. It involved multiple vendors. So I had to deal not only with my technical team, but also technical and non-technical teams of the other vendors and multiple stakeholders. I've already lost track of what the point was. Can you ask me the question again?
Yep. Tell me about a time where you had to effectively, or you are sorry, you were able to effectively collaborate and work with a mixture of technical and non-technical teams. And as a part of your story, please also explain how you were able to translate between technical and non-technical requirements for both parties.
Okay. So with the MVP, the way that I was able to collaborate, there's multiple ways to communicate, and I I kind of adjusted my communication depending on who I was speaking with, and this could be in the form of one-on-one calls, group calls, emails, Slack messages. We also would make sure our tasks were up to date in the product backlog so that anybody can be able to go in there and grab the latest statuses. And then documentation so that there was always kind of a status report on what was going on with our project. A big part of this project is that our project was just one piece of a much bigger project for the Air Force. So it was very critical that we were all aligned, not only on our progress, but on our shared goals, which is always a challenge. Teams tend to have different competing priorities. So what I would do is just try to focus on the overarching goal. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? and that way that could help us stay prioritized. I also like to use the RICE prioritization framework. So that's reach, impact, confidence, and effort. And that just kind of helps us to prioritize in a more effective way on which are the best features or tasks to focus on, whether it's our team or somebody else's team, because we can focus on the impact it's going to have across the entire project and then the amount of effort the team will need to use and how confident we actually are in getting it done. The way that I translate requirements, um, so I don't know. I'm just pretty good at. I try to use more natural language. I try not to use too much technical terminologies, especially when I'm speaking with the non-technical team. It still sometimes comes out because it happens, but most of the times I just try to be very clear. I don't want to be ambiguous. I don't want to use acronyms or words that they might not know. And a big way of translating requirements is just understanding what exactly is a solution, what exactly is the problem we're trying to solve. What are those pain points? Um, and that usually helps us to understand when I get back with the team to talk, to start coming up with solutions, making sure that we stay aligned with the actual needs of the customer.
And then what was the result?
I guess of the entire project, on our side, we were able to integrate with two of the vendors. We deployed across 3 Air Force bases, and we had set up the foundation as we're working to achieve authority to operate, which is the government signing off saying that you're okay to go to production with users. So we had developed the technical foundation to be able to scale across the entire Air Force.
Okay, got it. Got it. All right. So I chose this question because it applies to both PM and TPM roles, right? Being able to translate technical and non-technical requirements, working with both technical and non-technical teams. And one of the things that I like that Natalie did is she used one of the frameworks, right? In this case, RICE, for prioritization. And anytime you can reference like a framework or something from your training, certifications, etc., it does add a lot of credibility, and it also shows that you actually have a strategy, right? You're not just like being like, no, I'm a great communicator. Don't worry, I got this, right? Like it's okay.
But I do
Trust
got
me,
this. Don't worry.
trust me. Um, and we get more confidence that you got this when you can apply some type of framework to it, right? That's why PMs like to use the word agile a lot, even though we all know really how it goes on a day-to-day basis. But in the interviews, they love to use the word agile. Now, so someone in the chat said this job or this question seems important, and it is. Because as a PM, TPM, you are that bridge and the link between the technical teams and the non-technical teams. So being able to give them that confidence as to how you would go about doing that is exactly what they're looking for. Now, I think in general, as in an interview, probably shouldn't say the words I don't know, but that's okay. You were kind of spitballing and trying to like figure out where to go from there,
Yeah,
and this
I
is good
didn't have an
practice.
answer prepared for
Yep,
that.
that's okay. That's okay. But you focused on making sure you're able to achieve and prioritize the problems that you're trying to solve, and then helping drive those technical and non-technical teams towards that appropriate solution, right? Now, the piece here that I would love to hear is for you to go one level deeper on that action side, right? Give me a very short example of like when you were building the MVP, you know, the non-technical folks in the Air Force wanted the website or whatever it was that you were building in order to do X, Y, and Z. And then so you took that non-technical terminology and then you went back to your engineering team and you translated that into technical terminology, which was like, we need to build X, Y, and Z using Java. We need to do blah, blah, blah using C#. We need, whatever. The website needs to be able to blah, blah, blah. I don't know, whatever it is that they were asking you, right? So give me that short example that shows me that you've got the technical and non-technical business side handled. Then, of course, don't forget your result. I had to prompt you for that one. So talk about how you were able to successfully deploy. But this question is not so much about the deployment of the project, right? This is about the stakeholder management between the technical and the non-technical teams. So your result should also be focused on how you were able to, I don't know, how you got good feedback, or how the engineering team felt like, you know, they were they had such clear, or like your product roadmap was so perfectly aligned with whatever it is the Air Force had wanted, that they gave you an extension or something, right? Or the Air Force thought they wanted something that could achieve X, Y, and Z, but you actually told them that that wasn't feasible from a technical perspective, but you built them something else that ended up being even better. Who knows, right? Like that should be your result on this type of like technical, non-technical management style question. Yeah, exactly what Andrew said, right? Repeating back to the non-technical users their goals and pain points, and then how each of those, and then how to achieve each of those technical goals from a technical perspective. Love it.
Yeah, just trying to remember specific examples is what I've been struggling with. Like I was messaging with one of my old coworkers earlier, and I was like, "Hey, do you remember this part and this part?" And like I mentioned a couple of things. He goes, "Man, I completely forgot we even did that." So it's like people just don't remember. We do so much. So I'm like trying to rack my brain to think of specific examples.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I know that it happened. I know I did a lot. I just have to
Yeah.
remember them.
Yeah. So one thing that I've also found to be helpful is if you have access to it, I don't know if you do, but if you have access to some of those work articles, you could go back and look at some of the things you've done, the reports you made, the things you built, tested out, some of the email chains, who knows, right? Like that usually kind of helps spark up some ideas. When talking for experience and mentioning freelancing, can I mention our freelancing agency as a company? Yeah, I mean, anytime you're doing work for someone, right, you can use it as an example in the interview. So, okay, I'm gonna ask this question, and then I need to go run and get my charger before this laptop dies. Let's try some hypothetical ones. I think you're ready for it, Natalie.
I might ramble, but let's do it.
That's okay. That's what we're here to practice. Okay, so imagine I hired you here at Microsoft, right, as we'll just call it a product manager role now, because I
TPM
genuinely
is
believe
fine, yeah.
I genuinely believe this is a product management role. So let's just imagine I hired you here as a product manager for, what is this again? It's like something in Azure, right?
Yeah, the
The
customer
Azure
experience
Customer
team.
Experience team. So you're a PM on the Azure Customer Experience team. So if you're working here, what data would you utilize? What reports would you pull? What data would you look at in order to identify potential new features to add to our product roadmap?
So the type of data that I could use in order to determine new features, I would first look at our existing products, look at the product usage, the product telemetry, and the service data, get an understanding of how our current customers are using our products so that we can start trying to identify a pattern in a gap that we're missing. Maybe there's a process that a customer will go through and there's a high drop rate at a certain part of that process. We can dig into there and try to understand, why did they drop off? Why didn't they finish the process? Some other data that I could use is from informational surveys, either online, reading the surveys, being in newsletters. I'm also I serve on the board of Sim South Florida. It's a tech leadership community, and it's focused on executives. So I go to networking events there, and I get to hear from the community, from other executives using products, what it is that they wish they had. in the service that they're currently using. So I would just kind of combine data from different places, from the actual products that we already have, and then from what we're hearing our customers saying that they want. And I think one of the biggest things is also just seeing what the pain points, what their problems are, because they might say that they want something, but that might not be the solution to their problem. So I like to just always make sure to drill down to the why and understand what is it that we're trying to solve? What issues are you running into? I know I
Can
can be
you
better.
take one of those data points that you talked about? Like, let's take customer usage. Let's
Okay.
just pretend customer usage is low. What types of product features or ideas would that data tell you? And then what would you do with that data?
Okay, so if I saw that customer usage was low on a certain product, first, it's important to know my customer. I need to know who the customers are who are actually using it. And if there are some who begin to use it, but then kind of abandon the process, I want to gather kind of their persona as well to see who is our target audience, get a better understanding of who this product is for so that we make sure to align the features to their needs. I'm sure I can go a lot more technical than that, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
That's okay. At least you know. You should be able to get more technical here. Okay, so number one, Natalie had super good ideas, right? Like the different types of data you should be looking at, usage rate. You said product telemetry. Don't even know what that means, but that sounds super cool, right? Product telemetry. She also made a good point that not only do you have to listen to your customers, but sometimes they don't even know what they want. So if you just go purely on customer feedback and data, it doesn't always give you the best ideas. So you have to cross-reference that with some other things that Natalie had talked about. So all those things, super good idea. Make sure when you do answer this question, everyone talk about those things. Now, what did we talk about in the boot camp, Natalie? How do we answer hypothetical questions?
So I know I'm supposed to be gathering my thought and I'm supposed to have the whole process. But it's just like I would have to sit here and think too much. And then I feel like if I'm even quiet for 5 seconds, it's awkward in an interview. At least
Well,
when
it's
I'm
not going to be quiet
working.
because it's not going to be quiet because you're going to be thinking out loud, right?
Yeah.
So besides that, what is the one thing that every hypothetical answer needs to have?
I don't remember. I do know hypotheticals, you don't use the star method. I remember that one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So every hypothetical answer needs to have some structure to it, right? Because what we don't want to do is just start. Let me get in the middle of the frame here. It's just start so you can all see my finger guns. Just don't start shooting off ideas, right? Even though the ideas are good, if you just start shooting off ideas, there's no organization, right? It just seems like as an idea comes to you, oh, and this, oh, and this data, oh yeah, and this and this one too. Oh, and don't forget this one, right? It's like, okay, does she have a plan? Does she have a strategy? Or does she just kind of like wait for ideas to come to her? She shoots them out. Are they good ideas? Are they bad ideas? Right? Like, who knows? So, first, we should have some type of organization and some structure. Right off the bat, actually, I could see that there is probably 3 different types of data you should look at, right? 3 types of data. First would be internal, like I would say you could call it like internal existing existing product data. So for like things like product usage, obviously, I don't know what you said, product telemetry, whoever knows what that means, right? Like those are some examples of that. Second thing you want to look at, right, would be customer feedback data. That's also important. Customer feedback data based on like tickets, based on, I don't know, user surveys you're doing, based on whatever. Third, maybe you would want like general, you would also want to look at like industry trends or norms, right? Like what else is happening in the cloud service or cloud sector right now in terms of new things that Google Cloud is doing versus what AWS is doing, right? Like where's the market going? How does AI impact certain things, right? Like what should you be thinking about for AI features versus whatever, who knows, right? Like those are your 3 types of data that you would want to consider to influence your product roadmap, right? That's your structure. Now you go back and then you deep dive on each of them for me, right? About a minute each. That should give you close to like a 5-minute total and comprehensive answer. And then when you're doing those deep dives, that's when you can do kind of what I was talking about, right? Which is like, well, let's just say hypothetically, I looked at the data, customer usage is down. Then that would tell me that we need to think about doing X, Y, and Z for the potential product. There are some pros and some cons on doing that, but this is how I would mitigate some of that when I'm thinking about a product roadmap. That's just one example. If next, going to the second thing, right, which would be around the customer feedback data. When I'm doing user surveys, right, I want to make sure that we're looking at things not just at like overall CSAT scores, but we're looking at who knows, blah 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 blah. If the user data tells us that we should be doing X, Y, and Z, right, I would definitely consider that as part of my product roadmap. But as you said, sometimes customers don't actually know what they want. So I would want to cross-reference that data with some internal usage data that would, I would want to look at product data around blah, 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 blah that we have at our company. And if it aligns, then I would add that to my product roadmap, only if that aligns. If it doesn't align, then that would tell me that our customers want X, Y, and Z, but maybe the technology is not quite feasible or whatever. So we have to figure out how to, manage that. Right. So now you're kind of giving me like one example, kind of deep in each one, that shows me you have that breadth of knowledge and you can handle different situations.
Yeah, definitely
Make
like
sense?
that answer. It's just the whole of the XYZ, blah, blah, blah portion of it. That's when my mind kind of goes blank. It's like I have the answers, but in an interview setting, I just can't get them out.
Yep. But that's why we're practicing.
Yes.
All right. Next, let's do another hypothetical. So, in your experience, what are some opportunities or like areas of improvement that you've commonly seen when it comes to customer implementation of? You can choose cloud products or just software products in general. And then how would you try to prevent these types of gaps or pitfalls?
So some opportunities and improvements for customer implementation and how to prevent the gaps. So do I go with the assumption that I've already communicated with the customer and have already identified an opportunity?
So in this hypothetical question, I'm asking, in your experience, what are types of gaps or mistakes that companies tend to make when they are implementing software for their customers? And then how would you try to prevent those if you were working here for us?
Okay. So the types of mistakes that I tend to see is customers don't always utilize the product to their full potential. And as such, they won't be as happy with the product because they'll feel like they're not getting their return on investment, spending all this money on a product, but not getting much out of it. But it's really just a knowledge gap for them to know what services we offer and specifically how it ties back to their needs. So like the analogy of, a screwdriver is a great tool, but it's a horrible hammer. So if you're not using it for the right thing, you're going to think it's bad. So when I see these mistakes, how do I prevent it? Part would be during the onboarding process with the customer, or if we're already past onboarding, just during our regular status reports. understanding, again, their pain points and their needs. And then I would usually have them walk me through what it is that they're currently doing so that I can get a better understanding of how they're using our product. And then from there, I can usually identify, since I have the knowledge of the product, I can identify areas of where they could be utilizing certain features. And in addition to that, once I start gathering the data of just common times that different customers all seem to not be aware of a specific feature, then I can start working with the UI UX team to understand, why don't the customers know about this feature? Why aren't they using it? And we could work on improving that user experience or the feature itself.
Okay. So Natalie, what have we learned about hypothetical answers? What do we need?
I know I need structure, but I don't know.
Okay, so because and this is a great example that I think everyone can learn from. And by the way, Natalie is doing a great job, right? So this is a perfect example because right now, what you've been able to do so far is walk me through only one example of a common pitfall or mistake that happens during implementations, right? But you were talking for so long, you felt like you talked about a lot of stuff with me, right? But you actually only talked about one type of mistake, which is the customer is not using the product properly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why it's so important to first start with the framework, right? Like if at the beginning you just take one step back and you go, and I thought you were doing it because you asked me twice, and I was like, okay, she's got it, she's
I
got it,
was trying.
right? And you were like, okay, types of mistakes during implementation, and you were like, the first type of mistake I see, I think you even said the word first, and you were like, the first type of mistake I see is when you implement the product but the customer isn't using it properly. And I was like, great. Then she's going to tell me what the second mistake was, and then you were like, so for example, if you're implementing it, and I was like, no, right? So this is where it's
I
like
couldn't think of
perfect.
other examples, like of other instances.
And that's okay, right? But like, let's just say, hopefully you can think of more than one, right? So you would first start off by being like, okay, so if we're talking about implementations only, some of the common mistakes, pitfalls, gaps I've seen, one of it could be utilization is not quite what we need it to be. Another one could just be lack of technical like implementation of the wrong modules or incorrect settings, right? Which could then lead to improper usage of the tool, customer dissatisfaction, a high number of different support tickets, etc. And then the third type of gap that we tend to see is a misalignment between business requirements and technical requirements, right? The customer believes that they need the software, whatever, cloud, whatever, to achieve X, Y, and Z functionality, but that's actually not even possible in terms of like what we can do from a software perspective. Then you go back, right? And now you deep dive for me of, okay, if this was the work gap and I was at Microsoft, like how would I handle this, right? Why would this be happening? There's 5 different reasons. Well, for an interview, make it simple, right? You should be like, there's 2 different reasons why this could be happening, right? Customer could not be using the tool improperly because A, there's not enough training on the tool, or B, whatever, we overstated and we overpromised and underdelivered from a sales perspective, right? If it's the first one, this is what I would do because I'm the PM. If it's the second one, this is what I would do because I'm the PM, right? Then you move on to the next one. So that also buys you some more time to kind of like think through the rest of your answer too, right? If you're able to give me that framework up front, then you've still bought yourself like 30 seconds, right? Your brain is still going. And then when you have to circle back now, you should have had a little bit more time to kind of figure out, okay, what are my forks in the road? What are the pros and the cons here? How do I kind of want to talk about, or even what do I want to talk about?
Yeah.
Does
I
that kind
think
of make
another
sense?
problem that I have is my work style. I like to write things down, and it helps me stay focused and it helps me remember. And I feel like I can't really do that too much in an interview. Even though I'm typing fast, it's still not really enough. So like the way that I would do it in an actual meeting would be I would I would be able to write down that structure. I could start kind of, brain dumping, and then I go back and I organize it. And I can't do that in an interview.
You can though. You can.
How?
Right. So I ask you the question, right? In your experience, what are the different types of opportunities or types of mistakes that happens during customer implementation of software tools? And then how would you go about preventing these? Then you go, okay, what are the different types of mistakes or opportunities that happen during software implementations that I have seen? But if I was at Microsoft as a TPM, how would I go about doing that? Well, there's different types of mistakes that people can make or companies can make when they're implementing softwares, right? So what are the different types of mistakes that I've seen? Well, obviously there's the whole utilization piece. That's pretty obvious. What else is there besides that? Right. So like right there, I've got 30 seconds. And yes, I am repeating the question, but the interviewer also knows that like I'm now thinking out loud. So there's no awkward silence and they can now see where I'm going, right? They can see now I'm trying to find types. So as far as they can tell, they can see me trying to organize stuff before I just start talking, right? They're like, okay, Natalie's thinking about types. That's good actually, because there are different types of mistakes that companies can make. I wonder if she's going to think about technical versus not, right? And then you're like, oh, right, okay, so yeah, maybe they're not utilizing the product. Oh, okay, or maybe like we just implemented it wrong. Kind of sucks, but that also does happen, unfortunately, sometimes, right? Or maybe we've actually implemented it correctly, but turns out the business requirements and or what the company needs to use it for, we actually have a misalignment in what our product actually does. And we may actually need either product enhancements or we may need to have sold them a totally different product, right? Okay, I've got an idea now, right? And then you go, okay, now I would like to begin. So first, from my experience, there's basically 3 different types, right? We can call them, A, B, right now, and then you like walk them through it, you explain what each of them are, and then you can go back and then you can deep dive. Right. So if you wanted to, you can type it out. For me, my style is I just think out loud as I go through it. But if you want, you can type it out. Right. No problem. Because
I worry
they're
that
still
they're
steering you.
That they're going to perceive it negatively if I'm typing, thinking I'm trying to Google an answer when I'm not. I'm writing in Word my structure, my thought process.
Yep. So then you can
Would
tell
it
them
be
at the
better if
beginning,
I
right?
handwrite notes, or does
I
it
mean,
not
yeah.
make a difference?
I mean, you can handwrite it if you wanted to, but you can also tell them, right? Like, hey, for this hypothetical question, I like to type out things when I'm thinking. I'm not reading any answers. I'm just gonna type out my thoughts here. And is that okay? And you wear glasses, right? So they'll be able to see your screen if you're actually reading something or not. So most likely they'll say yes. If they say no, I'm not really sure because I can't tell if you're reading something, then you can go, no problem. Is it okay if I write it down with a pen? And they go, okay, yeah, sure, that's fine, right? So you can always preface that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's more real world scenario. If I'm in a meeting, that's how I'm going to be. I'm going to be writing down my notes and organizing things.
Yep. And then, but the good thing too, right, is as you interview for the same types of roles, they're all going to be very similar questions, right? Like the whole technical to non-technical requirement translation thing, right? So over time, you also won't need to continue to do this for every single question either, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Everyone, Natalie, huge round of applause, please. That was amazing. We ran through a lot of different questions. We did a mixture of like TPM, PM style stuff, some technical, some non-technical. Everyone in the chat was super supportive and giving great ideas. So thank you again. Awesome job, Natalie. And yeah, if anyone wants more interviewing tips, please check out the Albert's List YouTube channel. And then of course, I've got my Career Shakers YouTube channel as well.
All right, wonderful.
Yeah, Albert is next week, number 100.
Number 100 is next week. Yes. So thank you everyone for watching. I will be the one interviewing next week, which I haven't done in a long, long time. You can come watch me do a product marketing manager role for a AI solution at Microsoft. So RSVP, I will send through an Eventbrite link so you can join, come and heckle me, come and ask me the tough questions you wanted to ask me since I've tortured you for 100 mock interviews already. and we'll see you then. We also have a lot of other events going on Albert's List. So if you're interested, go on into our Eventbrite page where many of you found this, and we will see you there as well. Thank you all so much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.